Hi everyone, my name is Andres. Today we're going to talk about what happened to 38 Studios in these past few weeks. Game in the background is Minecraft, although heavily modded version of it. Well, not heavily, it has two big mods on it, but that's the topic of this video. So yeah, if you don't know who are the 38 Studios, let me back it up a bit. So 38 was created back in 2006 by Kurt Schilling, a baseball player, who was known for his interesting games, specifically EverQuest. He took part in several events with Sony Online Entertainment, and then he created his own studio. It was formerly known as Big Green Monster Games, yes. But then changed their name in 38. In 2009 they acquired Big Huge Games from THQ, the creators of the Rise of Nations strategy game, which I fairly enjoyed back in the day. I thought it was a fun game. But yeah, so I have to know that when 38 was created, they had 160 employees, so acquiring another game studio even increased that amount. We're talking more than 200 employees for a studio that hasn't even released a game yet. That's a lot. So yeah, it was known that this game studio was working on two games, both set in the same universe. One was a third-person RPG, very similar to the Elder Scrolls game, which turned out to be Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. The other was an MMORPG codenamed Copernicus. For the Reckoning game, Kurt Schilling kind of gathered this dream team kind of for well, this fantasy game. Basically, he partnered up with Todd McFarlane, the creator of comic book series, R.E. Salvatore, who wrote a lot of fantasy novels and worked on games like Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate, and Kurt Schilling also got the help of Ken Ralston, the lead designer of Oblivion. So he obviously got the people who knew their way around this fantasy kind of. They had a good start, but I already was skeptic at that point because RPGs take a lot of time and money to develop. And then if you double that, and if you kind of additionally try to create an MMORPG, that's a lot. But this time came as the time was coming, as the time was passing by, people learned more about the Reckoning game, but nothing was known about the Copernicus. So finally, February 7th, 2012, Reckoning comes out. Gets kind of, let's say, not a really warm reception, but basically the overall sense was it's fine, but it's too long for its own good, and while the combat is fine, the world, there's nothing really much to do in it. It's not as well realized as, let's say, the Elder Scrolls games worlds are. So yeah, that's that. So what's next? Well, a couple of months passed, and there were starting these rumors appearing that 38 might have been having financial problems, but nothing was concrete. But not long after that, it turns out that 38 Studios took a loan from the state of Rhode Island, a fairly big loan, and they needed to pay back a part of it by May 1st. They needed to pay $1,125,000. They missed that date. That's why all this information started to rise up, and several things because of that, became public. The state of Rhode Island approximated that to run 38 Studios it costs $4 million a month. which is a lot of money. We also found out that Reckoning sold 1.2 million copies, but still the state considers it as a failure. And because of all these financial problems, it also turns out that 38 doesn't know where to get any additional money. The state refused to loan them more money. 38 kind of sent them a check, but it was rejected because it turns out that there were insufficient funds. So yeah, kind of let's say, I'm gonna use swearing, but kind of a clusterfuck of a situation. And earlier this week, it all ended with the fact that all the staff of big huge games and 38 studios was laid off. So several hundred people lost their jobs in the end. If you want more, that's kind of the basics of it. If you do want more in detail, you can visit any video game news site that was covered pretty heavily. I recommend go visiting Giant Bomb. The news editors there did a good job of covering this. But yeah, so this is kind of, for me, this kind of example of great ideas, but kind of management not really knowing what they were doing. Like, for what I understand, Curt Schilling kind of had, because of his baseball career, kind of had a good capital and enough money to create and sustain a video game studio. But I think it grew too big too fast for its own good. Like, announcing 2 projects in the same universe already is very skeptic. I think it's a bad idea all along. Like, because just think about it. How big must be the problems in the studio when a game in the new IP sold 1.2 million, which is a good number, but it's still considered a failure, and isn't enough to fund and save the studio for the further projects. Now, I don't know how and where their money was spent. I know that the studio culture was that they tried to approach things differently, and they wanted to make make everyone feel important, to the point I think they had once a month or once in every 2 months, kind of these, when they big gatherings, when they gather all of the employees, and they would random call out different employees, from a typical programmer to lead designers, to talk what they have done, and kind of everyone had their goals. So basically they wanted to make everyone feel important, which is great, but I think you have to be a proven studio to make that work. Because to think about it, studios that actually have this kind of culture have a history and have kind of proved themselves and were able to kind of create this culture on their own, and they knew how to run a game business so that they could implement these ideas. Because think about it, Valve does this, Double Fine does this, Naughty Dog does this, but all those companies will release games before, and they all started pretty small. So they started back in the 90s, or the early 2000s. So they weren't big companies that had to prove themselves, earn some money, and only then they kind of could have these cultures and be known for the way they develop games. I think Curt Schilling saw all these examples and kind of tried to make all of this, and ultimately failed. And I think it's sad. Like, Reckoning had promise, and in the end it turned out that it was too long for its own good. I know about the MMO part. They had to release the state of Orlando, kind of let's say force them to release information about that game, and kind of a trailer appeared, and look, the day was an interesting art style and it could be something, but it probably will never come out at this point, which is sad. People worked on it, but yeah, like yeah, that's, I think this is a good example of how not to run a game business ultimately. Like, because everyone has to admit that mismanagement of funds ultimately led to this. And having all these big ideas and trying to make them work, that's bad. Because I think ultimately what killed it is not that they didn't, because maybe they had enough money to make all of this work. Maybe both of these games could release, but I think because just Sterling did have a lot of experience in managing a gaming company before that, that is, he had none of it. He kind of fell prey to his own inexperience, and this led to what led, and kind of the creative, well, the creative heads of that studio, they were kind of pumped for that game, for Reckoning, and as it was coming out, they were excited, but excited isn't enough. So yeah, that's what happened. Now, Third Eight Studios still exists as an entity, as a company, but what's gonna happen to it, I don't know. And yeah, that's kind of it. I don't think that there's anything much to say about it. I hope people will learn, and I think that's why you see a lot more companies, a lot of these smaller companies rising up and creating indie games, because while it still requires a lot of work, at least you can maintain a smaller staff that way, and games like Minecraft or Bastion or Braid can be created and still be fun and don't need 200 employees. I'm sure, like, studios grow from that thing. They said, like, Riot Games, creators of League of Legends, cannot be considered indie anymore, can they? But they were at one point a small group, so they started small and grew big. 38 Studios proved that if you start big, you can go small in a couple of years. But yeah, that's my thoughts. If you have anything to add, feel free to leave a comment. But I was, am, and always will be Andres. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day. Bye.